In the shadows of Mexico's streets, cartel violence has erupted in shocking, unforgettable ways. These 5 horrifying attacks expose moments of sudden terror and ruthless brutality, leaving scars on families, communities, and anyone caught in their path, a chilling glimpse into a world ruled by fear and power. In 2011, the border city of Nuevo Laredo, Tamaulipas, had become one of the most dangerous places in Mexico to speak the truth. Traditional media outlets had already been silenced by threats and attacks, forcing ordinary citizens and a few courageous journalists to turn to social media to expose cartel violence. Among them was Marisol Macias Castaneda, known online as La Niña de Laredo. She believed that information could save lives, but in a city gripped by fear, that belief would come at an unimaginable cost. Marisol, also referred to in reports as Maria Elizabeth Macias Castro, was 39 years old and served as editor-in-chief of the newspaper Primera Hora. Though her position at the paper was mostly administrative, she refused to remain silent as her city descended into terror. Using a pseudonym, she began posting updates on criminal activity through the website Nuevo Laredo en Vivo, a citizen-driven platform created to warn locals about gunfights, roadblocks, and cartel movements. Her online identity, La Niña de Laredo, became a trusted source of information at a time when no one else dared to speak. Los Zetas, one of Mexico's most violent cartels, had taken control of Nuevo Laredo and ruled it through fear and brutality. The group had already attacked journalists, bloggers, and anyone suspected of leaking information. On September 13, 2011, the bodies of 2 young social media users were found hanging from a bridge in the same city. A note signed with the letter Z warned against posting about cartel activities online. Despite the warning, Marisol continued to report. On the morning of September 24, 2011, authorities made a horrifying discovery at the Christopher Columbus Monument in a busy area of Nuevo Laredo. Marisol's body was found near the base of the monument. Next to her remains lay her keyboard, computer cables, and discs, symbols of the work that had cost her life. A handwritten note signed Ziz was left beside the body. It read in part, "I am La Niña de Laredo, and I'm here because of my reports and yours, for trusting the Army and the Marines." The message made it clear that her fate was a direct consequence of her online reporting. The brutality of the attack shocked even a country accustomed to cartel violence. Marisol's killing marked the first documented case of a journalist being targeted specifically for social media reporting. Her death came amid an escalating campaign by Los Zetas to silence all forms of dissent. 2 months later, another user of Nuevo Laredo en Vivo, known as Rascatripas, was found dead at the same location. Authorities in Tamaulipas confirmed her identity and announced an investigation, offering condolences to her family. Yet, as with many crimes against journalists in Mexico, no one was ever brought to justice. Her employer, Primera Hora, did not cover her death, an omission that underscored the deep climate of fear gripping local media. International outrage followed. The Committee to Protect Journalists called her death a disturbing milestone, urging better cybersecurity training for reporters and renewed protection for press freedom. UNESCO Director General Irina Bokova condemned the killing, emphasizing the urgent need to safeguard journalists in Mexico. The website Nuevo Laredo en Vivo paid tribute to Marisol by posting a memorial banner bearing her username and the message, "You'll always be present." Her death symbolized the deadly intersection between journalism, technology, and organized crime. By silencing Marisol, Los Zetas sent a message that no voice, no matter how anonymous, was beyond their reach. Yet her courage remains a reminder of the human cost of truth-telling in one of the world's most dangerous places for the press. On April 6, 2015, a quiet mountain road near San Sebastián del Oeste, Jalisco, became the scene of one of the most disturbing cartel attacks ever recorded in Mexico's history. The Fuerza Única Jalisco, an elite police unit, was driving from Puerto Vallarta toward Guadalajara when their convoy entered a narrow stretch of highway flanked by forested slopes and sharp curves. They had no way of knowing that heavily armed cartel members were already waiting for them, hidden in the high ground and prepared to strike with military precision. At around 2:50 p.m., the convoy entered the Mascota Las Palmas highway near the rural community of Soyatan. The road's isolation and surrounding mountains made it the perfect place for an ambush. As the first patrol trucks came into view, gunfire erupted from both sides of the road. Automatic rifles, belt-fed weapons, and explosive launchers tore through the air as fire and fuel consumed the vehicles below. Within moments, flames engulfed several police trucks, trapping officers inside. Those who managed to escape the inferno were met with relentless fire from the hillsides. The attack lasted nearly 30 minutes, an eternity of chaos and terror for the men under siege. By the time reinforcements arrived, the gunmen had already departed. 15 officers lay dead, 14 men and 1 woman, while 5 more were wounded and airlifted to hospitals in Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara. The remains were burned to the point where identity was nearly impossible. Investigators later found hundreds of bullet casings, fragments from grenade explosions, and traces of gasoline used to intensify the flames. 2 vehicles were found intentionally torched to block the road, delaying the arrival of help. The surrounding forest still smoldered when the first helicopters circled above. Authorities soon confirmed that the ambush was the work of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, known as CJN, one of Mexico's most powerful and violent criminal organizations. Investigators discovered that the gunmen had camped in the area for nearly 48 hours, waiting for the convoy to pass. The attack was reportedly ordered in retaliation for the death of Heriberto Acevedo Cardenas, known as El Gringo, a regional CJNG leader killed in a shootout with state police just 2 weeks earlier. In addition, the government's arrest of several cartel members following an assassination attempt on Security Commissioner Alejandro Solorio had further fueled the cartel's rage. This was a calculated demonstration of power. The ambush was unprecedented in its scale and sophistication. Criminal groups in Mexico had attacked police before, but large, coordinated strikes against entire convoys were rare. The CJNG's use of high-caliber weapons, explosives, and tactical encirclement showed a level of organization more commonly associated with military forces. The assault also revealed the group's willingness to confront the state head-on, a bold challenge to government authority and a chilling sign of the cartel's growing confidence. Analysts described the attack as both an act of revenge and a message to rival groups and officials. The CJN could strike at any time and anywhere it chose. In the hours that followed, the Mexican Navy and federal police scoured the surrounding mountains, but the attackers had vanished. That evening, Jalisco's governor confirmed the deaths of 15 officers and condemned the violence, calling it a cowardly act against those sworn to protect the state. The following day, the coffins of the fallen were draped in flags bearing the Jalisco crest. At the funeral ceremony, colleagues and family members gathered in silence as the names of the dead were read aloud. Debbie Almeida Hernandez, Jesus Adrian Chavez Hernandez, Valente Chavez Hernandez, Jesus Alberto Chavez Rodriguez, and others whose lives ended on that mountain road. The attack drew international attention. The next day, the U.S. Department of the Treasury sanctioned the Jalisco New Generation Cartel and its allied group, Los Quinas, under the Foreign Narcotics Kingpin Act. All U.S.-based assets linked to the organizations and their leaders, including Nemesio El Mencho Oseguera Cervantes, were frozen. The statement from the Office of Foreign Assets Control described the CJNG as one of Mexico's fastest-growing criminal empires, built on violence and corruption. The timing of the sanctions underscored the scale of the threat the group posed both domestically and internationally. The ambush of April 6, 2015, marked a turning point in Mexico's struggle against organized crime. It exposed the vulnerability of even the most elite police forces and highlighted the cartel's ability to conduct complex, deadly operations. For Jalisco, it became a symbol of the escalating brutality of the cartel problem, a reminder of how far the violence had evolved and how deeply it had penetrated the nation's institutions. On November 4, 2019, a narrow desert road in northern Mexico became the scene of one of the most horrifying cartel attacks in recent memory, leaving 9 members of the LeBaron and Langford families dead. The families, American-Mexican Mormons, were traveling to a wedding when their convoy of 3 SUVs was ambushed by gunmen armed with high-powered rifles and explosives. The attack unfolded with ruthless precision, demonstrating the reach and brutality of the cartels operating in the region. The LeBaron and Langford families have lived in northern Mexico for over a century, descendants of U.S. settlers who migrated south, seeking refuge from anti-polygamy laws. Over generations, they established isolated communities such as La Mora in Sonora and Colonia LeBaron in Chihuahua. Many of the residents held dual U.S.-Mexican citizenship and led quiet, self-sufficient lives. Despite the distance from major cities, the families had become targets for organized crime, particularly the LeBarons, who had openly condemned cartel violence in the region, escalating tensions with criminal groups. On the morning of November 4th, 3 SUVs carried family members south from Colonia LeBaron toward La Mora for a wedding. The convoy included Ronita Miller LeBaron with her 4 children, Donna Ray Langford with her children, and Christina Marie Langford with her baby. Around 10 a.m., as they drove through a remote stretch near Bavispe, Sonora, gunmen opened fire from multiple positions along the road. The attackers moved with military-like coordination, blocking potential escape routes and targeting each vehicle in turn. Ronita's SUV, immobilized by a flat tire, was riddled with bullets and set ablaze, killing her and all 4 of her children, including infant twins. Christina Langford, attempting to show she posed no threat, was shot along with her child, although her 7-month-old baby survived, found unharmed inside the vehicle. The remaining vehicles were also struck, leaving 3 women and 6 children dead. The carnage was immediate, and the violence unrelenting. Rival cartels had long contested the region where the ambush occurred. La Mora and the surrounding areas had historically operated under the protection of Los Salazar, an affiliate of the Sinaloa cartel, while La Linea, linked to the Juarez cartel, sought to challenge their dominance. Months before the attack, tensions had escalated, including violent shootouts over territory and enforcement of fuel restrictions. Investigators later determined the may have been a deliberate message from La Linea to Los Salazar, although the exact motive remained intertwined with the complex web of cartel rivalries. Surviving children displayed extraordinary resilience. A 13-year-old boy walked 14 miles over 6 hours to reach help, shielding his siblings with branches along the way. A 9-year-old girl separated from her brother set out alone to seek assistance, navigating the desert terrain for hours. Their efforts ultimately alerted authorities and prevented further loss of life. Mexican and U.S. authorities responded quickly, sending military personnel to secure the scene and assist family members. Funerals were held under heavy protection, with mourners traveling from distant states in the U.S. The Mexican government suggested the attack may have been a case of mistaken identity, though the family's outspoken opposition to cartel violence may have also contributed to their targeting. Initial arrests were made, but investigations revealed the deeper complexities of cartel operations and rivalries in the region. The FBI joined the inquiry due to the victims' dual citizenship, signaling a rare instance of international cooperation against organized crime. The killing of the LeBaron and Langford families exposed the relentless danger faced by communities living in cartel-controlled regions. Innocent lives were lost in a calculated act of violence that underscored the military capabilities of organized crime in northern Mexico. The tragedy highlighted the fragility of security in the region and the human cost of the ongoing conflict. While investigations continue, the story of the 9 victims remains a haunting reminder of the brutal realities faced by those caught in the crossfire of cartel warfare. On August 25, 2011, a devastating attack unfolded in Monterrey, Nuevo León, one of the most prosperous cities in northern Mexico, shattering the illusion of safety for its residents. The city, long regarded as an industrial hub and a symbol of middle-class stability, became the site of one of the most disturbing cartel attacks ever recorded. In broad daylight, the normally bustling streets surrounding the Casino Royale became a scene of chaos and terror, as armed men arrived with a vile purpose that would leave a permanent mark on the community. The attack began in the mid-afternoon, when 12 members of the Los Zetas cartel, accompanied by one of their leaders, met for a final planning meal at a nearby restaurant. Shortly afterward, they gathered gasoline from a Pemex station and departed in a convoy of 4 vehicles, including a Mini Cooper, a Chevrolet Equinox, a blue GMC, and a gray Volkswagen Beetle. Surveillance footage captured their arrival at the casino shortly before 4 p.m., and within moments, a group of 8 to 9 gunmen stormed the building. They opened fire to create panic and then poured gasoline across the entrances, igniting a fire that spread rapidly throughout the 2-story facility. Inside, approximately 150 staff and customers, primarily women, scrambled to escape the flames and gunfire. Many sought refuge in bathrooms, offices, and stairwells, while others attempted to flee through the main entrance, only to find it blocked by fire and debris. Emergency exits had been locked, and in the ensuing panic, dozens were overcome by smoke. Witnesses reported hearing explosions and believing grenades had been detonated, intensifying the chaos. Rescue teams were forced to use backhoes and other heavy equipment to break through walls to reach those trapped inside. In just 3 minutes, 52 people, 10 men and 42 women, including 2 pregnant women, had perished from carbon monoxide poisoning. Some victims were discovered in offices, bathrooms, or under tables, while 7 corpses had suffered burns. Among the dead were employees and customers, including young women working their first days at the casino, and mothers attending lunch or bingo. The aftermath of the attack brought immediate national attention. President Felipe Calderón declared 3 days of mourning and described the attack as a barbaric act of terror, urging Mexicans to unite in the fight against organized crime. Federal and state authorities deployed thousands of soldiers and police across Monterrey, using armored units and helicopters to stabilize the city. Investigations revealed the attack had been carried out as retaliation against the casino's owners for refusing to pay extortion fees, though the violence quickly exceeded their intended message. Several suspects were arrested within days, with confessions confirming participation in the attack, yet decades later, only a handful have been convicted on unrelated weapons charges, and no one has been held directly accountable for the deaths or arson. Families of the victims endured prolonged anguish. Many struggled to secure compensation for funeral and hospital expenses, while memorials erected to honor the dead were repeatedly vandalized or removed. Survivors recalled the horror of seeing friends and relatives trapped inside as smoke and flames consumed the building, describing the chaos as overwhelming and inescapable. The tragedy became a grim reminder of the reach and ruthlessness of cartel operations, particularly against civilian targets in middle-class areas. The Casino Royale fire remains a haunting symbol of the human cost of Mexico's cartel war, demonstrating the vulnerability of ordinary citizens to organized criminal violence and leaving a legacy of sorrow and unanswered questions. In the heart of Culiacan, Sinaloa, one of Mexico's most perilous cities for journalists, danger is a constant companion. For decades, cartels have shaped daily life, leaving communities fearful and silencing voices that dare to expose the truth. Among the few who refused to yield to intimidation, Javier Valdez Cardenas stood out, a fearless journalist committed to uncovering the human cost of organized crime. His reporting painted the lives of those trapped in the illegal substances war, grieving mothers, children forced into violence, and neighborhoods caught in the crossfire. Yet even his courage could not shield him from the lethal realities of Sinaloa's streets. On May 15, 2017, Valdez's commitment to truth placed him in the crosshairs of the very criminals he documented. At 50 years old, he left the Rio Doce offices, the newspaper he co-founded in 2003, to purchase chicken for his family's lunch. The streets were quiet but tense, a common feature of the city where rival factions of the Sinaloa cartel were embroiled in a violent power struggle. That morning, the conflict between the sons of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, known as the Chapitos, and Damaso Lopez Serrano, alias El Minilik, had intensified. 8 days prior, Valdez had published a column critical of Lopez Serrano and his role in the cartel's internal feuds, highlighting the intricate alliances and rivalries driving the violence. As he walked near the Rio Doce offices, gunmen ambushed Valdez in broad daylight, executing him with 12 shots fired from 2 different weapons. The attack was staged to appear as a car theft, yet the precision and brutality left no doubt that his killing was ordered. Fellow journalists and investigators noted that both his cell phone and laptop were missing, but there were no signs of a robbery. The killing was directly linked to his work. Colleagues arriving on the scene initially mistook his body for a hit-and-run victim, only to recognize him moments later, the Panama hat and distinctive shoes confirming the grim reality. The aftermath sent shockwaves across Mexico and the international press community. Demonstrations erupted, including candlelight vigils and protests with banners demanding justice, while President Enrique Peña Nieto and global organizations condemned the act. Valdez's death underscored the extreme risks journalists face in Mexico, a country where more than 150 reporters had been killed since 1994, and self-censorship is widespread. The Committee to Protect Journalists described the death as emblematic of the ongoing climate of fear, noting that Valdez had received multiple threats in the months preceding his death. Legal proceedings eventually brought partial accountability. Picos Barroeta, identified as one of the triggermen acting on Lopez Serrano's orders, was sentenced to 32 years in prison, while another accomplice received 14 years. A third suspect, Sanchez Romero, was killed before trial. Lopez Serrano, meanwhile, remained in U.S. custody on trafficking charges, with Mexican authorities seeking his extradition to face justice for orchestrating Valdez's assassination. Even amid grief, Rio Doce persisted, reaffirming its mission to report on organized crime despite the perils. Valdez's legacy endures as a symbol of courage and the uncompromising pursuit of truth, a reminder of the human cost of the Mexican cartel situation, and one of the most disturbing cartel attacks ever recorded.